All right, I think all systems are go. Although YouTube's chat screen looks a little bit weird again. But you know what, man? Sometimes you just got to get started and you just got to go. We're trying again on the Panther-Lair Show here for June 15, 2021. We tried at 8:30. We tried at 8:35. Things started working and then they stopped working and then maybe they started again, but I don't really know. But we're active again. I'm going to see if I can get the chat screen popped up. I know I had some comments on the initial live stream that we went. Here we go. We got people lining up, ready to go to jump in on the comments, and we'll definitely get to the comments and questions. You know, for those of you on the live stream, I appreciate you coming back here at 9 o'clock to try this again. People listening to the podcast during the week, you're probably like, what the hell are you talking about? You know, all these technical issues. We've tried this podcast about 2 or 3 times now, and we are here and ready to go, and I think we're good to go. I think things are working. You know what, man? If they don't work, if things go wrong, we're just going to say screw it and hang up, and maybe I'll just tape an audio podcast, go old school with it, and go the OG route and release an audio podcast like we used to do in the old days of 2019. All right, it's been wild. The last 2 weeks. It's been hectic the last 2 weeks. Things have been going nuts as we said they would, and when we talked last week, it was fresh on the heels of Pitt's first official visit weekend, first big official visit weekend in like 2 years. And I think there was a big question of where are the commitments? Why didn't any guys commit coming out of that first official visit weekend? And I said that, look, it's going to take a little bit of time. Guys are going to want to take a couple visits before they're convinced about their decision. They haven't gotten to take a visit in 2 years, or a year and a half or something like that. So, they're going to want to take some time. I didn't expect any commitments out of the first official visit weekend. But what I said is once you get through the second official visit weekend, there's going to be a higher chance of getting commitments. Once you get through the third, it's going to be even higher. And the fourth, it's going to be even higher. And so on and so forth. And sure enough, that's been the case. As we sit here on Tuesday night, Pitt has gotten 3 commitments since Saturday. Really since Friday, I guess. Commitments all came over the weekend. Actually, Pitt has gotten 4 commitments. 3 have been publicly announced, and they were all guys who visited this past weekend. And that's really kind of what we expected to see. That's what you expect to see in June with June official visits is recruits come to campus, recruits love it, recruits commit. And that was the case. And they got 1 commitment during the official visit weekend. 2 more came after the guys went home. Thought about it a little bit. A couple of guys from Buffalo committed. That's a short drive. It's like 3 hours maybe, I think, to where they are, outside of Buffalo. And so it didn't take long for them to think about it and decide that Pitt was the place they wanted to be. But they thought about it and decided that was the place for them. And so Pitt adds 3 more commitments. 4, really, like I say, there's one that's not publicly announced just yet, but it's sort of created a vibe that I feel like I'm going to be distracted during this podcast anyway. Just because of all the recruiting things that are going on. So you add in the technical issues that kind of gave us trouble to begin with, and it's been one of those nights so far, folks. But we're going live. It looks like everything's happening. It looks like we're going good. We got whatchamacallit. We got the live chat going, so we got some comments and questions going on in there, and we'll get to all of that. But let's start off with the commitments, right? 3 commitments that have been publicly announced, and I think these are 3. This is 3 big ones. I really think it's 3 big ones. It started off with Jordan Bailey, running back from Tampa area. He really committed on Friday night. Kind of made it public, I think, on Saturday. It's when we talked to him, and he tweeted it and all those things. He's a running back out of Tampa, 6'1", 180. Running back. He's got good speed, and you just watch his film, and it's impressive. He just makes plays. And you can talk about this, or you can talk about that, you can question this, you can question that, but he just goes out and makes plays. And I think he was, if not at the top of the running back board, he was probably one of the top 3 targets for Pitt on the running back board in the 2022 recruiting class. I think they really did prioritize him. I think they hoped to get him, him and maybe like 2 other guys that they were really pushing hard on. And I think they would have been happy to get any one of those 3, and they got it with Jordan Bailey. And you look at his stats, he only rushed for like 600 yards this past season, sort of limited carries, split time with another guy. But, average double-digit yards per carry, which I think speaks to his explosiveness. And you watch his film, and the guy just he plays strong. He's a bigger back in terms of height. At 6 foot 6'1", but he's got good speed. And he can move, and he can run some guys over, but he can run around guys, and he can put moves on and make plays. And I really think Jordan Bailey is going to be, for this class, what maybe a guy like Khalil Anderson was for last year's class, or Jordan Addison was for the class before. Guys who committed over the summer maybe don't have an offer sheet that's going to blow you away. Jordan Bailey had West Virginia, maybe. I think he had one other Power 5 offer when he committed to Pitt. I think that number is going to increase. I think he's going to be the kind of guy that you're going to battle for. Khalil Anderson had a better offer sheet when he committed to Pitt. I think Jordan Addison did as well. But both of those guys added more offers as time went on, and it ended up being a battle. And Pitt had to fight right up to the very end to keep Khalil Anderson and Jordan Addison in the class. Addison obviously turns into a freshman All-American. So, that paid off pretty well. That worked out pretty well. I think there's every expectation that Khalil Anderson's going to come in and play well, play at a high level, and really excel. I don't know if he's going to step into a starting role like Jordan Addison did, because they've got some experience and some depth at cornerback. But I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to get on the field as a freshman, and I think he's got a really bright future, a lot of potential. I think Jordan Bailey could potentially follow a similar path, at least as far as his recruitment goes, where he gets into his senior season, starts blowing up again. And we saw this with Henry Parrish, who committed to Pitt a couple years ago, who, commits on the official visit, starts having a huge senior season, gets a bunch of new offers, and he ends up going to Ole Miss. It's always a risk you're going to run with some of these early commitments, that these guys have a big senior season, draw new interest, and all of a sudden they're start looking at other schools and end up going somewhere else. And we'll see what happens to Jordan Bailey. I'm not going to speak for him. I'm not going to say, no way, he's locked in. That'll never happen. You learn after a long enough time when you cover recruiting that you never say never. But I think when you look at Bailey, he is that kind of guy who I could very much see him adding more offers through the course of his senior season, and Pitt having to really battle to hold on to him. Ideally, he won't take any other official visits, although Jordan Addison did. He took a late official visit to Maryland. And therein lies sort of the one of the downsides of this early official visit period, of being able to get guys on campus in June. And 9 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, it's a good thing. You can get guys on campus, you can get those commitments, and you got those guys locked up. And you're not going to lose them, and you're going to hold on to them through signing day. But there are those instances where guys start drawing some new interest, decide they want to take an official visit, and it kind of sucks if you are, you got his commitment from a June official visit, and now it's November or December, and he's taking an official visit somewhere else. And it could be a kid from Georgia, like Khalil Anderson's not a good example. He didn't take an official visit to Pitt because he was getting recruited last year. They couldn't take official visits. But a kid from Florida, a kid from Tampa, like Jordan Bailey, if he ends up taking an official visit somewhere else in the first week of December, you don't have any real recourse. You can't answer that with an official visit of your own, and so this is going to always be something to watch when you get these early official visit commitments. The official visit obviously made a huge impact on that recruit and convinced him that he wanted to go to Pitt. The problem is, when they take that official visit in December, now that's going to make the impact, and that's going to be the fresh memory, and that's going to be the thing that stands out more than the official visit you took 6 months prior. And so the Pitt coaches are going to have to work. They're going to have to work on any of the commitments they get this month, and any of the guys they've gotten committed so far. They're going to have to work to hold on to them and make sure that Pitt stays fresh in their memory, and the idea, the appeal of Pitt stays fresh for them, and they don't forget why they liked Pitt so much in the first place. And I think I talked about this last week on the podcast, that you get through the official visit for anybody, whether it's a guy who committed or a guy who didn't, and really it's almost like you have a whole new level of work, because you've got to spend all the time from now on reminding that kid how much he liked his time at Pitt and why he liked Pitt so much, and why, if it was someone who committed, why they committed. And so you've got there's a lot of work to be done for the Pitt coaching staff with these guys that we're talking about who committed this weekend, and even the guys who didn't, who they're going to keep working on and trying to land. They've got to work. They've got to work really hard, at least as hard as they did when they were recruiting them before the visit or before they committed. So Jordan Bailey is going to be no exception to that. I think he's going to be it's going to be a battle for Pitt. They're going to have to work real hard to keep him in the fold. Not that I think he's inclined to waver, but I think other schools are going to jump in because he's a really talented running back. And again, I think he was one of Pitt's top running back targets. So you get one of your top targets, that's a good day. They follow that up, kid from Tampa, they follow that up by getting a couple of guys from the Buffalo area. And this is defensive end Jimmy Bear Scott, if you look at his Twitter, 6'3", 250-pound defensive end, former Tennessee commit, backed off that commitment in January. And, has looked around, took an official visit to Rutgers last weekend, which, for the first weekend of June, which is a not unimportant point. We're going to talk about that in a second. But he's a good defensive end. 6'3", not the tallest guy, but, good pass rusher off the edge. And obviously Charlie Partridge likes him a lot. And we certainly are, I think we're all at the point, and we've been at the point for a few years where Charlie Partridge likes a guy. We're going to take that. We're going to take his word. That counts for something. So they get him, and I think that was a good score. And then they follow that up with another guy from Buffalo, who we talk about Jordan Bailey being one of Pitt's top skill position targets, one of Pitt's top targets at running back. And, they follow up the commitments of Bailey and Scott with Addison Copeland, who is, again, another Buffalo area guy, wide receiver prospect, and probably one of the top wide receivers on Pitt's board. Again, a guy who's already committed to a Power 5 school. He was previously committed to Rutgers, backed off that commitment in, I think, January or early February. Almost immediately started picking up new offers. Notre Dame jumped in the mix. Penn State jumped in the mix. Pitt jumped in the mix. Bunch of schools. He took his first official visit, like with Jimmy Scott, was to Rutgers. Those two went to Rutgers together, and then they went to Pitt together. Obviously, they liked Pitt a little bit better than Rutgers, which, again, I'm going to come back to in a second. But you see that offer sheet, and it speaks to something, and then you watch him on film. You look at his size. He's 6'3", 190. He took his official visit Thursday to Saturday, stuck around until Sunday, and attended the prospect camp for a chance to work with Brendan Marion, the wide receivers coach. You watch him at the prospect camp. I got a chance to do that. Watch him run routes, take screen passes, and just beat a corner, which, in a one-on-one drill, all you're doing is screens. In this one section during the camp, they just run screens, and it's a screen pass, but there's no one screening. It's a one-on-one. Quarterback hike, boom, throw the screen, and then can the receiver beat the corner, or can the corner get to him? And Addison Copeland at 6'3" is getting around guys, smaller guys than him. It shouldn't work that way. The drill should not work that way. You shouldn't be able to have the kind of success that did I say Jordan Addison, that Addison Copeland was having in this drill. You shouldn't be able to have the kind of success that he was having as the receiver on that end of the drill. But he was, and he was really good. And then they ran some more drills, down the field stuff. I remember at one point they did a one-on-one drill or a one-on-one rep, and this wasn't screen. This was just any route. And he just ran a go route and just blew past the corner and made a great catch in the end zone for a touchdown in this one-on-one rep. And I remember Brendan Marion running down the field saying, we don't even need routes. We don't even need to run routes because we can do this. And that's right. That's what they can do. With a guy like Addison Copeland, that's what they can do. And you could see why he was such a top target for Pitt at the wide receiver position. And so if you look at the weekend as a whole, a couple of things emerge. One, you get top targets at running back and wide receiver. They're not done at wide receiver. They're going to take another one or two guys there. Probably done at running back, I would think. Although they tried to take two running backs last year and then obviously lost Malik Newton when he was medically disqualified in January after he enrolled early. So they only brought in one running back last year. Maybe they try to make that up this year. I could see them sitting pat with just Jordan Bailey. I don't know if they need two running backs in this class. But obviously they'll take more receivers. But they got two of their top targets at those positions. And if you get your top targets at positions, that's a good thing. Assuming you set your sights high, you could set them low and say, these guys are all our top targets and get them to commit immediately. With some guys who maybe don't have any better offers or anything like that. But in this case, I think they set their targets on some big-time playmakers, and they got them. That's, the first thing that stands out to me, the first storyline that emerges from this run of commitments here that we've seen. The next thing is Jimmy Scott and Addison Copeland, both guys from Buffalo, taking that official visit to Rutgers in the first weekend of June. And I think this is important. Scott being a former Rutgers commitment, or Copeland being a former Rutgers commitment himself. Scott was a Tennessee commitment. But, the fact of the matter is, as much as we all might want to have a lot of fun about it and laugh about it, and I do, and I will, and I'm not going to stop. I'm never going to stop making fun of Rutgers because it's Rutgers. I mean, Rutgers will always be Rutgers, and that doesn't mean that they will always, only achieve at a certain level or struggle or something like that. What I mean is, they'll always just be kind of a butt of a joke for me. And I mean, no disrespect to Rutgers. I apologize if I met Greg Schiano. If Greg Schiano is watching this live stream, Coach, I'm sorry. But you're Rutgers, man. I can't help this, okay? I have too many memories of Rutgers. And yes, I watched Dave Wanstead struggle for 1, 2, 3, 4 seasons before he finally beat Rutgers. It was 2009 until Dave Wanstead lost to Rutgers in 2005. He lost to Rutgers in 2006. He lost to Rutgers in 2007. And probably worst of all, he lost to Rutgers in 2008 when Pitt was like 6-1 or something like that, and they were rolling. They opened the 2008 season with a loss to Bowling Green, and then they got on a roll. They won like 5 in a row or 6 in a row. They're 5-1 or 6-1, and they come home and they're all pumped up and they're ranked, and they let Mike Teal throw for like 500 yards because they didn't know that they had no idea that Rutgers might try to run play action. So this is not even really a comment on Rutgers, success versus Pitt. It's just a comment on Rutgers being Rutgers. And I can't help but make fun of Rutgers. I mean, I can't help that. So I know we all, and I think you probably like that too, we all make fun of Rutgers. But the fact is, Rutgers is kind of rolling right now on the recruiting trail. Greg Schiano is doing a really good job. And I can't deny, Greg Schiano's a pretty good coach. I think Tennessee screwed that up. They should have hired Greg Schiano when they had an opportunity to do so a couple years ago. And Greg Schiano's a pretty good coach. And I think what he did at Rutgers was pretty good, even though he never won the Big East. We always hold that against Dave Wanstead. I mean, Greg Schiano, for all of his great accomplishments at Rutgers, never won the Big East. The fact that remains, I just can't help but make fun of Rutgers. But they're rolling right now. They're doing a good job. They're recruiting at a really high level. They've got a top-ranked recruiting class. I mean, they're doing a good job. We'll see where the rankings end up at the end of the year, but Rutgers is recruiting really well. And I think Rutgers felt really good about their chances. From what I've heard, Rutgers felt really good about its chances with Addison Copeland and Jimmy Scott coming out of those official visits. And I don't think they were too concerned about those guys going to Pitt afterward. I think those guys had future official visits set up to places like Boston College and South Carolina. I think were the two that Copeland mentioned. I think Scott had 1 or 2 official visits set up. They all canceled. The Rutgers staff, I think, really believed they were going to get those guys. And then those guys visited Pitt. And again, this isn't a Pitt versus Rutgers thing. Like I said, I mean, you want to talk about Rutgers indignities. 2011, Pitt goes out to Piscataway, and I've never seen a coaching staff more confident about a game. And I'm talking about the Pitt staff here, and they walked in to a friggin' hornet's nest because that Rutgers staff was pissed. Because that Rutgers staff had Frank Signetti a year after Dave Wanstead got fired. And it had Jeff Hafley a year after Dave Wanstead got fired. And it had Brian Angelico a year after Dave Wanstead got fired. And they had Matt Dudak on the recruiting staff a year after Dave Wanstead got fired. All these guys got fired from Pitt and went out to Rutgers and beat the crap out of Pitt. I've seen Rutgers humiliate Pitt many times. So this isn't really a Pitt versus Rutgers thing. It's more just about... I'll give praise to Rutgers right now for where they are, but Pitt got the better of this situation. Pitt got the better of it by getting these two guys to commit a week after they visited Rutgers, including one of them being a former Rutgers commit himself. So, I don't think that's unimportant. If you can beat a school that's got a lot of recruiting momentum, and you can beat them for some recruits that they really want to land, that says something about what you're doing on these official visits. And it's a big credit to Pat Narduzzi. It's a big credit to their recruiting staff and obviously the assistant coaches. it's a credit to what they did on that official visit weekend that pulled those guys in. All right, let's jump out to the comments here, the questions and comments. People talking about Rutgers. The 2005. It mentioned the 2006 Rutgers game. Yeah, Pitt was 6-1 at that point. They had only lost to Michigan State, who incidentally was like the only real team they played. Although they beat Virginia and Cincinnati earlier in the year. Cincinnati is a Big East opponent. Virginia in a non-conference game. They lost to Michigan State. But they were like 6-1. So I mean, they looked pretty good. They're going to make it to a bowl game. And Dave Wanstead's second year, all this stuff. And they lost to Rutgers, and that started a 5-game losing streak that ended up leaving them at 6-6, and that was pretty. That was a rough way to end the season, because not only did they lose to Rutgers to fall to 6-6, but they had a brutal game, a double overtime game at UConn. They had a bad loss to South Florida, where Darryl Strong told everybody they were number one. If you're watching the video, this is my index finger, but Darryl didn't use that one. And then they just got obliterated by West Virginia and Louisville. West Virginia and Louisville did horrible things to Pitt in those games in 2006. So, and the Rutgers game really started that slide. But let's jump down here and get to some questions and comments. I wanted to get Michael B. jumped in as a super chatter on our first attempt at a live stream, and we really appreciate him. Want to get his question in here. He says, Chris, got a couple questions for you. What do you think? Will Pitt this season win 9 regular season games or more? And 2, do you think Kenny Pickett will end up playing in the NFL? Thanks, and keep up the good work. Do I think Pitt will win 9 regular season games or more? That's $1 million question, buddy. Sure. I think they will. I think they'll get 9. Sure, why not? I mean, we've talked about that. We've broken down the schedule 100 times. I mean, it's built in that they should be able to get 8 regular season wins just with the 4 non-conference games. And then, Virginia, Syracuse, Duke, and Georgia Tech, they should win those 8 games. And that means they just need to beat either Virginia Tech or Carolina or Miami or Clemson. I mean, those are the 4 other games remaining on the schedule. They just have to win one of those to get to 9 regular season games. And I kind of think, I don't want to get too far into a hyperbole or get too ridiculous about it, but if they don't do it now, I'm not sure when they will, because the schedule is about as favorable as it's going to be for quite some time. So, yeah, I think they should, and I think they will. Let me see here. Your other question, will Kenny Pickett play in the NFL? Yeah, I think he'll have an opportunity. I mean, Nate Peterman is kicked around. I don't think Nate Peterman's that much better of an NFL prospect than Kenny Pickett. I'm not sure if his arm strength is better than Pickett. He can't run as well. I think Nate Peterman runs better than we give him credit for, but I don't think he runs as well as Kenny Pickett. Probably was a little more efficient. Also had a better offensive line. So, at least in college that we're talking about, I think Kenny Pickett will have an opportunity. I don't know if he'll get drafted. But I think he'll have an opportunity. So, we'll see. Let's see here. Scroll down. A lot of comments about this Jalen Hood-Schifino thing. Top 30 recruit in the class of 2022. Former Pitt commitment. A guy with local ties. Had an official visit scheduled to Pitt this week. Apparently, the visit was canceled by Pitt. We're working on trying to gather some details on it. I can't really give any thoughts on it until I get more details on it. I mean, that's just the simple truth of it. I can sit here and say this and I can say that, but I don't know. I don't know what was behind the decision. And so until I get any kind of background info on it, I can't really offer an opinion on it. It's a curious move, and I'd be interested to find out, see what info we can dig up. So, we'll keep trying to work on different sources and see what we can find. We'll see what story is out there. So we'll have to, keep an eye on Panther-Lair.com to see what we can come up here. Let's see here. S-Max says, it seems like recruits are lining up to play on Pitt's defensive line. Yeah, I think Pitt's defensive line is very appealing to, should be appealing to recruits right now. I think Charlie Partridge should have a reputation among recruits of being a guy that you want to play for. You can look at this year's draft with Rashad Weaver and Patrick Jones. You can look at the overall success of the defensive line in recent years and kind of the numbers that they've put up. You can look at the projections for some of the guys they have on the defensive line this year. Now, I don't know why you wouldn't want to play. And you can look at some of the recruits that they've already landed. I think if you're a recruit in the 22 class and you see that, 2 years ago they got Dayon Hayes, and last year they got Elliott Donald and Nakai Johnson and Dorian Ford. And you can look at this year; they're in great shape for Tyrese Fearby, the 4-star defensive end from Perry. I think a defensive line recruit would say something's going on here. Something that I might want to be a part of. And I think that success has been. I think it's carried over. Let's see here. Hog Muncher says, if you could take one former Pitt player from the last 10 years and add them to this roster, who would it be? 10 years, huh? So that goes back to 2011. Well, I mean, your obvious, your best players are guys like James Conner and Tyler Boyd. Conner will be a good addition. I think would go a long way in helping secure the, helping establish a running game. Maybe a Brian O'Neill. An offense. You know what? and I don't know. If I think back 10 years to 2011, to be honest with you, and I mean, you're going to run into a problem with the protection. All right. You're going to run into a problem with protecting because it was a problem when he played. But I might take Tom Savage. I mean, Tom Savage is one of the more overlooked quarterbacks in Pitt history. The guy played in 2013. Pitt was obviously 6-6 that year, largely because of offensive line issues, and a little bit of defensive issues as well. Though Nolan McGuire points out Aaron Donald, and maybe he would be the guy to add to this team. But does Aaron Donald change them from get them from 7 wins to 8 wins, to get from 8 wins to 9 wins, 9 wins to 10 wins, et cetera, et cetera? I'm not sure if he does. And this is not a knock on Kenny Pickett, and certainly that was not a knock on Aaron Donald. But Tom Savage, was in line to throw for 3,000 yards before he got knocked out of the Pizza Bowl, at halftime. And Hog Muncher says over Kenny football, expected a back or O-line depth. And yeah, I mean, I might take Brian O'Neill. It would probably honestly be for me. It would be Brian O'Neill or Tom Savage. And Josh Newark says Nate Peterman in 2016 was better than Tom Savage. I don't know if he was. Actually, I don't think he was. I think Nate Peterman had a better offensive line. I think he had a better offense. Well, I shouldn't say a better offense that he was working in, but I think he was really adept at running that offense. And Nate Peterman had a really good season in 2016. I think Tom Savage, though, particularly Mark Whipple's offense, where you want a quarterback who can throw the ball all over the place. I mean, Tom Savage probably had the best arm of any Pitt quarterback since Rod Rutherford, I would say. And I don't know, I don't even really hesitate on that. I mean, he had a huge arm. The guy could throw the ball a mile. And probably goes back to Rod Rutherford to find another quarterback who could throw the ball like that. And I think you put Tom Savage, a quarterback with his throwing ability, on this team, if you can protect him just a little bit, which is an issue, and that was an issue in 2013. And look, you can look at that game Aaron Donald had at Georgia Tech, where he had like 11 tackles and 6 tackles for loss. It was absurd. One of the best games by a defensive player, let alone a defensive tackle, that I've ever seen. You look at that game and say, how could they lose that game? Well, they lost that game because they couldn't protect Tom Savage. They lost that game because Dorian Johnson had to step in and start at left tackle as a true freshman, and Jeremiah Tauchu just carved him up, and he had no chance. And I felt bad for Dorian in that game because he just got destroyed. And other people were bringing up other suggestions. Colin Towle has mentioned Scott Orndorff, and Nolan McGuire has mentioned Jordan Whitehead. I mean, those guys were great players. And certainly would be a boost. I think all these guys were mentioning, whether you want to talk about Aaron Donald, James Conner, like I mentioned, Brian O'Neill, Jordan Whitehead, Scott Orndorff. These guys they're good players, and they would be a boost, and they would be a boost at positions where Pitt needs a boost in 2021. But for the biggest boost I'm going to get, particularly playing in this offense, I think Tom Savage might be my guy. Maybe it's just late. I mean, we've had all these issues with the technology on this podcast, and obviously recruiting things. I'm constantly like glancing over to see what's going on, what's cracking on any text messages or things like that. So I don't mean to be distracted. But maybe I'm overthinking it by going with Tom Savage. But I mean, I think Savage is one of the more overlooked quarterbacks in recent Pitt history, and I think he could do a lot in this offense. And then you add in the guys that he would have to throw to, that he's going to throw to Jordan Addison, who can make a lot of plays. He's going to throw to Taysier Mack, who can get downfield and make catches. He can throw to, Jalen Barden, who I think is going to be a stud this year. Lucas Krull, who I think is going to be a stud this year. Tom Savage didn't have these. Well, I shouldn't say he didn't have these kind of weapons. He had Devin Street and Tyler. I say Devin Street first, but I mean, he had Tyler Boyd. He had Devin Street. He had J.P. Holtz. Scott Orndorff was a freshman, although I think he was hurt and didn't play as much. And obviously he had James Conner, so he had some weapons around him. Probably better than Pitt is going to have. Well, is it better? Are the weapons in 2013 better than the weapons now? Tyler Boyd is a big advantage for 2013. I don't know if they have a guy like Tyler Boyd, but Jordan Addison's pretty special. I think he's going to have a huge sophomore season. So, yeah, I would put Tom Savage on this team. He couldn't run at all. So if the protection wasn't there, if the protection didn't hold up, then there'd be big problems. Whereas Pickett can keep some things alive. And again, I like Kenny Pickett. I think he can play really well this year. I think he can do a lot for Pitt. And I think he can have a really good season and finish his career on a really high note. But if I had to pick one guy who I think would make the most of an impact, I think it might be Tom Savage. All right, we had a question here. Anthony Tennyson, our guy Tony, says, Chris, do you think Pat Narduzzi will have a top 20 class this year after having a big class last year? I don't know. I don't know what the numbers are going to end up being. I don't know if the numbers of the class are going to be big enough to support a top 20 group for Pitt. I think sometimes Pitt needs to deal in volume to kind of get into that area. To get into the top 20. I don't know if they're going to get enough top-ranked guys to crack the top 20, but I think they should definitely have another top 30 class with a real chance to crack the top 25 if they get one or two key guys, and if a few of the guys that they end up getting also get a bump in the rankings, which should happen, but I think I say that every year, and it often doesn't happen. So, I think they can have a shot at a top 25 class. I think they should be in the top 30. Probably unlikely that they crack the top 20, but I would say top 25 is within reach, or should be within reach. But we'll see. One more commitment to be announced here for Pitt. We'll see when that news comes out. And then, the commitment list will be fully updated. No official visits this weekend. Pitt will have some prospect camps, get some recruits on campus and see who comes in to visit. They're going to keep doing that throughout the week. And then more official visits on the final weekend of the month, and that'll wrap up a pretty exciting June, a pretty busy June. So make sure you're staying tuned to Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, recruiting, you can find it all at Panther-Lair.com. And, of course, we have message boards where we can interact and ask questions and comments and have conversations about Pitt sports, football, basketball, and recruiting. It's all there at Panther-Lair.com. Talk is Pitt says, do you think we'll land a 5-star recruit ever again? I think you should keep your eye on the 2024 class. Quentin Martin out of Bell Vernon is going to have a real shot at being a 5-star prospect. Real shot at it. We'll see. It's a couple years down the road, but he's a stud. He's going to be a stud. And I'm not going to say he's a Pitt lock because he's going to have a whole bunch of guys coming after him. He's going to have a whole bunch of schools trying to get him. And that's going to be a big battle. It's going to be a big recruiting battle for the next few years. But that's a guy that I would circle as a real chance, which incidentally, I think the last 5-star recruit that Pitt got, at least coming out of high school, was Dorian Johnson, who was from Bell Vernon. Maybe there's a connection there. All right. Stay tuned to the website, Panther-Lair.com. I apologize again for the technical difficulties tonight for everybody on the live stream. Thanks for jumping in. Thanks for hanging around, coming back a half hour later after we screwed it all up and started over again. Thanks to everybody who listened to the podcast during the week. I know it's a little shorter than usual, but I feel like we've gone even longer than usual, if that makes any sense at all. So thanks again for listening to the podcast. Thanks for joining the live stream. Have a great week. Don't forget the Panthers Insider Show on Saturday morning at 8 a.m. where we'll be on 93.7 The Fan talking about all these things, pit recruiting, any new commitments that come up between now and then, and just any other developments, because there might be some basketball recruiting news that comes out of there as well. So we got a lot to talk about these days, and we got a lot of opportunities to talk about them. We got the Panther-Lair Show here on Tuesday nights at 8:30. We got the Panthers Insider Show on Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. And then every other hour of every other day, it's Panther-Lair.com message board. So make sure you're there. And, we got a free trial. Check my Twitter for the Visits 2021 profile, or promo, it's called. You get a free trial up through, I think, the first or second week of August, which is a pretty crazy good deal. So make sure you go check that out at Panther-Lair.com. Look at on Twitter at Panther-Lair. We got the details there if you want to check out the site for the summer and see what you've been missing. See if you want to jump on board. So Panther-Lair.com, that's the website. Go check it out. And I think that's about it. Thanks again for tuning in. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Have a great night. Have a great rest of the week. We'll talk to you Saturday for the Panthers Insider Show, and then we'll be back next Tuesday night at 8:30 on YouTube.